Conqueror Worm by Edgar Allan Poe. Lo, 'tis a gala night within the lonesome latter years. An angel throng bewing bedight in veils and drowned in tears. Sit in a theatre to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Mimes in the form of God on high mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly, mere puppets they who come and go, at bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings in visible woe. That motley drama, oh be sure it shall not be forgot, with its phantom chased for evermore by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth into the self-same spot, and much of madness and more of sin and horror the soul of the plot. But see, amid the mimic rout, a crawling shape intrude, a blood-red thing that rides from out the scenic solitude. It rides, with mortal pangs the mimes become its food, and seraphs sob at vermin fangs and human gore imbued. Out are the lights, out all, and over each quivering form the curtain, a funeral pall, comes down with the rush of a storm, while the angels, all pallid and wan, while uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy man, and its hero, the conqueror worm. So the first stanza is basically, it's gala, like Lo is like behold, and so it's behold a festive night, and a gala is a festive celebration, and within the lonesome latter years, so it's the last years of humanity, and the angels are watching and sitting in this theater to see a play of hopes and fears. And it's basically they're about to see a play of like just misery of human life. And the orchestra is like sporadically playing the music of the heavens, and it's just a super sad and melancholy night. And bedight and throng, like it's an angel throng is like it's like a flock of angels, and bedight is equipped or adorned. So a bunch of angels sitting in a theater, and they all have veils on them, and like veils could be like a symbol for funerals, and so that's why they have veils on. And then in the next line, we find out that actors or mimes come up in the form of God on high, meaning that, like, in the form of God on high is like the mimes made in God's eyes, because God is the highest form. So Poe is basically explaining that these mimes are humans that were made in God's eye, and they're muttering and mumbling low across the stage, and hither and thither is back and forth. So they're like running back and forth on the stage, and they're at the bidding of these formless, like huge things that are shifting the scenery, and flapping out their condor wings. Condor is like a type of vulture. It's the largest type of vulture in the world. And they out from their wings, they spread their wings, and a bunch of sorrow and distress comes out of them. So it's just this whole like play of just awfulness and the darkest parts of humanity. And that motley drama, motley's chaotic or diverse, so it's a chaos induced drama, and it should not be forgot because it's so chaotic and memorable. And with its phantom chased forevermore by a crowd that sees it not, uh it's like the phantom that it's being chased is in by a crowd that sees it not. It means that the crowd is trying to chase after this like phantom, and they're not able to seize it. And through a circle that ever returneth into the self same spot. So like it's just a circle, an infinite circle. It's a cycle. So that could be a symbol for how life is a constant endless cycle, and that death is always inevitable, and that death is always at the end of the cycle, and then the cycle just repeats because the conqueror worm comes and eats you in the dirt, because the worms always end the worms eventually eat all life. And much of madness and more of sin and horror, the soul of the plot. Horror is the main emotion when it comes out of this play and when it comes out of life. And so there's madness, sin, and horror in death and life. And then, but see amid the mimic wrote a crawling shape intrude, a blood red thing that rise from out the scenic solitude. A rout is like a chaotic gathering, and so it's saying, but see amid the actors' chaotic gathering on stage, a crawling shape is coming out, and it's the conqueror worm. He's gonna come and eat every one of the actors, and it rives with mortal pangs, sharp pains. The mimes become its food, and seraphs sob at vermin fangs and human gore imbued. It's the mimes are getting eaten by the conqueror worm, and the seraphs are a type of angel. They're depicted with a bunch of eyes and like 6 angel wings, I'm pretty sure, and they're like, "Be not afraid," and that's like their main quote in the Bible and stuff like that. So, and they're known for taking, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're known for transitioning humans into heaven, and they're the ones that come and collect the humans, the souls, I mean, at like to go into heaven, or like at the gates of heaven or something like that, I'm pretty sure. And imbued is like permeated, so the vermin fangs are like they're like soaking in on the like the blood is soaking in onto the conqueror worm's veins and fangs, I mean, onto the conqueror worm's fangs. And then out are the lights, out all, and over each quivering form the curtain of funeral pall comes down with the rush of a storm. The angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is a tragedy, man, and its hero, the conqueror worm. The lights shut off, and the curtain comes in dramatically, and like the bodies are like quivering and stuff like that, and the curtains come in, and a pall is a cloth that spreads over a coffin, so that's symbolizing the ends of death and you're about to be buried. And with the angels all pallid and wan, so they're pale and they're exhausted and they're sick to their stomach after watching that, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy, man, and his hero, the conqueror worm. This last couple sentences, basically the angels being sickly pale and pale with exhaustion is confirming and affirming that the play is about the tragedy, man. So about the tragedy of humanity. It's a very cynical point of view of humanity, this poem. And so the tragedy being humanity, and its hero being like, finally the human life cycle has ended, people are dying, and it's the conqueror worm, which is the worms that eventually eat you after death. So the figurative language I picked was metaphor and personification. So right here up on the conqueror worm, the entire poem is a metaphor for death and the end of human life. Um, and the entire poem is a metaphor for death. There's a couple more metaphors in here that just all eventually relate to the fact that the entire poem is symbolism for death and metaphors for death. And then I picked personification. While the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres, the orchestra does not have a set of lungs. It's not actually breathing. So I picked that, and it's the breathing is just like describing, because like when you're breathing fitfully, you're breathing sporadically, like a medical condition or anything like that, or you're on the verge of death or something like that. And the orchestra breathing fitfully means that the orchestra is playing sporadically, and they're playing meaningfully, and they're playing like they're about they're about to experience death and that they're at the end of the like their lungs are coming to the end. Um, and then for my sound effects, I did um I did the rhyme scheme. So you'll see the ABA BCBDB, and it's a very upbeat, like it's not upbeat, I mean, but there is definitely a beat to this poem. It's fixed verse, and it's a chaotic and harsh poem, and it's not supposed to bring out happy emotions, obviously, because it's bringing out death. I don't know, maybe some people, but definitely not your average person. And it's supposed to bring out the tragedy, and it's supposed to bring in despair and all that. And then I did alliteration for mutter and mumble low. And then my meaningful connection was that the poem reminds me of the Alaskan bullworm from SpongeBob. It was my favorite SpongeBob episode. It was the first SpongeBob episode, and it made me think of that because the Alaskan bullworm's eating the entirety of Bikini Bottom, and he's even eating all the fish, and then he eventually just falls down a cliff, and he just stays there, and they basically drove him away from Bikini Bottom. Um, it's a really stupid connection, but I don't know. This is what I thought of. Um, so the big question with this poem is, does the universe really care about human life and stuff like that? So the fact that I'm pretty sure from what I'm getting from this, Poe is hinting at the fact that the angels were just sitting there watching this play instead of using their powers or using miracles or anything like that to stop this tragedy and all of this despair happening that they're watching, and they're crying and they're pale and from exhaustion, and they're not using their powers to stop this even though they can. So from what I'm getting from this, I think Poe is hinting at the fact that uh the divine beings can't save you from death, and that divine beings will not save you from death out of whatever it may be, out of selfishness, may it be out of they are not able to, or anything like that, or like something above them is not letting them, anything like that. I believe that that's the big question. Um, the tone changes around here, where it changes uh from a, like, it's still chaotic at the beginning, but the orchestra is breathing. They're hither and thither and mumbling, and it's quiet, and they're shifting the scenery quietly, and the there's madness going on, but it's not until the chaos doesn't really hit its climax until the conqueror worm comes in and it intrudes, and it's writhing. And the tone changes to like this chaotic panic. And then for my tone words, I picked despair. And while I was looking for tone words, I found Helter Skelter. And obviously, I think first, like either the Beatles or Charles Manson. And it means a disorderly confusion or haste. And I feel like that really perfectly describes the tone of this entire poem. Um, and then I picked for the theme that death is waiting forever, and every organic life ends with getting inevitably devoured by the worms and the grounds. And it gives like this cynical point of view in life, and talks about how the worms eventually eat all life. Um, uh, and yeah, I drew some pictures. I drew a spider web, because I feel like that matched the vibe of the poem, and I drew my own little conqueror worm that really just looks like a leech. Because that's what it made me think of. And that's what I would do in like my own books. If I like something, I'll draw a picture next to it that reminds me of it. Um, and the tone also sort of changes right here at Invisible Woe, because when I was reading this, I was imagining like their wing, their vulture wings spread, and then all the distress and sorrow comes out of their wings, and then the motley chaotic drama just really starts building and building up in a crescendo until the conqueror worm comes out. And yeah, The Conqueror Worm by Edgar Allan Poe. Lo, 'tis a gala night within the lonesome latter years, an angel throng bewinged bedight in veils and drowned in tears. Sit in a theatre to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Mimes in the form of God on high mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly mere puppets they who come and go, at bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings in visible woe. That motley drama, oh, be sure it shall not be forgot, with its phantom chased for evermore by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth into the selfsame spot, and much of madness and more of sin and horror the soul of the plot. But see, amid the mimic rote, a crawling shape intrude, a blood-red thing that rises from out the scenic solitude. It rides, with mortal pangs the mimes become its food, and seraphs sob at vermin fangs and human gore imbued. Out are the lights, out all, and over each quivering form the curtain of funeral pall comes down with the rush of a storm, while the angels all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy man, and its hero the conqueror worm.